The room already has an answer. You walk into a room. You haven't said a word yet. You haven't introduced yourself, made a joke, or offered your hand. And already the room has an answer about you. Whether you're worth listening to, whether you're a threat, whether you're someone to respect or someone to use. This isn't paranoia. This is behavioral science. Researchers at the University of British Columbia found that social rank is assessed through nonverbal signals within seconds of entering a group interaction before a single word is exchanged. The room is already running its calculations. The only question is whether you're aware of it. Most people aren't. Most people walk into rooms hoping to be accepted. They smile a little too quickly. They scan for approval. They adjust themselves to fit whatever energy is already there. And in doing so, they hand their power away before the conversation even begins. The aware few do something different. They walk in already knowing how the room will respond because they designed it that way. In the next several minutes, I'm going to hand you 7 rules that the most powerful people in every room already operate by. Silently, deliberately, without you ever realizing it. Most people will click away from this video. Good. What I'm about to share isn't for people looking for comfort. It's for people who are finally ready to stop being managed and start being the one doing the managing. Whether you're 20 and just entering the workforce, or 60 and tired of being overlooked in rooms, you've earned the right to own. These rules work exactly the same. The room doesn't know your name, it knows your energy. But before we get to the rules themselves, you need to understand why most people, no matter how talented they are, never learn this. And the reason is darker than you think. Why the talented lose and the strategic win. Think about someone you know. Maybe it's you, someone who worked harder than everyone else in the room, prepared more, cared more, had the better ideas, the longer hours, the cleaner record, and still watched someone else rise above them. Someone more confident, more politically aware, someone who seemed to spend half the effort and collect twice the reward. That isn't random. That isn't the universe being cruel. That is the invisible architecture of social power operating exactly as it was designed to. Niccolò Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a villain's handbook. He wrote it as an honest map, a brutal, clear-eyed map of how power actually moves through the world. Not how we wish it did. He wrote, "The fact is that a man who wants to act virtuously in every way necessarily comes to grief among so many who are not virtuous." He wasn't celebrating that reality. He was documenting it so that you could navigate it. Learning these rules doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you literate in a language everyone around you already speaks. Drop it in the comments if you've ever been the most qualified person in the room and still been overlooked. So here are the 7 rules. And rule 1 is the one that changes everything, because it happens before you open your mouth. Rule 1, control the space before you speak. Picture someone who walks into a meeting room 5 minutes early. They don't hover near the door. They don't take the seat closest to the exit, the one that says, "I'm not sure I belong here." They walk to the center of the room. They set their things down deliberately. They settle in like the room was built for them. By the time everyone else arrives, it already belongs to them, and they haven't said a single word. This is not accidental. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by Whitcower, Tracy, Cheng, and Henrich found that high-status individuals communicate rank through distinct nonverbal signals and, crucially, that prestige. The kind of status earned through genuine respect is signaled not through aggressive space-taking, but through subtle chest expansion and a slightly upward head position. Quiet expansion, not performance. Presence. The people who try too hard, who take up space loudly, who dominate aggressively, they signal dominance through intimidation. It works, but it makes enemies. The prestige signal does something more powerful. It makes people want to follow you. In practice, this means moving slowly when others rush. It means choosing where you sit with intention, never defaulting to the periphery. It means keeping your posture open when the pressure in the room makes everyone else fold inward. Machiavelli wrote it plainly. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. The room builds its verdict on appearance first and substance second. That verdict is made before your yasum, your title, or your argument ever enters the conversation. Most people unconsciously make themselves smaller in unfamiliar spaces. Hunched shoulders, eyes down, a seat in the corner that whispers apology. The powerful person does the opposite on purpose. The passive person shrinks to fit the room. The powerful person reshapes the room to fit them. Controlling space is the foundation. But without Rule 2, even the most physically commanding person becomes invisible the moment they open their mouth, or worse, loses everything the moment they speak too much. Rule 2, the weapon of strategic silence. You're in a negotiation. Maybe it's a salary discussion. Maybe it's a conflict with a colleague that's been building for weeks. Maybe it's a tense moment at a dinner table where someone has just said something that demands a response. They make their point. They finish. They look at you. And you say nothing. Not because you have nothing to say, because you are choosing not to say it yet. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 full seconds of silence, and watch what happens. The energy in the room shifts. The other person's confidence wavers. They start to wonder if they've said something wrong. They begin to fill the void themselves, often revealing far more than they intended to. Silence is not emptiness. In high-stakes social situations, silence is the most aggressive move available. Seneca understood this at its deepest level. He wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." And nothing tests self-command more ruthlessly than the urge to speak when every nerve in your body is pushing you to respond. To control that impulse to sit still inside the pressure that is power in its purest form. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire and faced more pressure in a single afternoon than most people face in a lifetime, left a simpler instruction: the best answer to anger is silence. Here is what most people never realize. The person who speaks first in an awkward silence is almost always the one carrying more anxiety. And anxiety, in any room, is a confession of lower status. The anxious person fills every silence to ease their own discomfort. The powerful person sits in silence like it's a throne. One warning: silence used as punishment, as a weapon to wound, to freeze someone out. To manipulate through withdrawal, that is not power. That is cruelty wearing power's mask. The difference matters. But silence only works if you've already positioned yourself correctly in people's minds. And that is where Rule 3, the most Machiavellian rule on this list, comes in. Rule 3, control the narrative before someone else does. Imagine 2 people who make the exact same mistake at work. Same error. Same consequences, same moment of exposure. The first person panics. They over-explain. They apologize too many times to too many people. They go quiet in meetings for 2 weeks, hoping it blows over. And because they left the story unattended, other people wrote it for them. 6 weeks later, that mistake is still their identity in that room. The second person does something different. They name it first. Before the rumor spreads, before the whisper network activates, they address it calmly, briefly, and on their own terms. They frame it as a decision that didn't land the way they intended. They outline what they learned. They move forward without drama. 6 weeks later, that person is respected for their transparency. The mistake is a footnote. Their reputation is intact because they were the author of the story, not the subject of someone else's. This is narrative control, and it is one of the most sophisticated moves in Machiavelli's entire framework. He wrote in The Prince that a leader must always appear to embody virtue, not as a cynical instruction to deceive, but as a clear-eyed recognition that perception and reality are not the same thing, and that the powerful never confuse the two. In every room you enter, a story is being told about who you are, your competence, your character, your intentions. Either you are writing that story or someone else is writing it for you. There is no third option. There is no neutral ground. This means being deliberate about what you say first, how you characterize your own actions, who you are seen standing next to, what you choose to address, and what you choose to let pass in silence. This is not about lying. It's about never leaving your story unattended. The passive person lets the room write their character. The powerful person is the author, the narrator, and the editor in every room they enter. Now, once you control the space, the silence, and the story, Rule 4 teaches you the most counterintuitive move in this entire video. And it is the one most people would never dare to use. Rule 4: make people feel seen. There is someone in your life, maybe a boss, maybe a colleague, maybe someone you've known for years, who always seems to get what they want from other people. And here is what's strange about them. They're not the loudest person in the room. They're not the most aggressive, the most titled, or the most obviously impressive. But when you leave a conversation with them, you feel good. Understood, like they actually saw you, not the role you play, not the version of yourself you perform for the world, but you. And somehow, without quite knowing why, you find yourself wanting to help them, wanting to be in their corner. That is not charm. That is architecture. Robert Cialdini, in his landmark work Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion, identified social reciprocity as one of the most powerful and consistent forces in human behavior. When someone makes us feel genuinely acknowledged, we are wired instinctively, almost involuntarily, to give something back. Trust, loyalty, access, effort. We lower our guard around people who make us feel important. Because feeling important is one of the deepest human hungers there is. The most effective room controllers in the world understand this. They ask the question no one else thought to ask. They remember the detail you mentioned 3 weeks ago. They make you feel, in a room full of people, like you are the only one worth listening to. Now here is where this rule splits into two very different roads. The manipulator uses this to extract. They perform interest, perform warmth, perform attention, and once they have what they need, the attention disappears. People eventually feel it, and they never forget it. The person who operates with integrity makes people feel seen because that is simply how they move through the world. The result looks identical from the outside, but one is sustainable and one eventually burns to the ground. There is a difference between making someone feel seen as a tactic and making someone feel seen as a practice. The second one builds empires. Which of these 4 rules do you think the most dangerous people in your life already use on you without you ever realizing it? Tell me below. But what happens when someone doesn't lower their guard? What happens when someone in that room is hostile, envious, or actively working against you? Rule 5 is the answer, and it comes straight from Sun Tzu. Rule 5: never reveal your full hand. You have a plan. A real one. Something you've been thinking about, building toward, quietly preparing for. And someone asks you about it, a colleague, a friend, maybe a family member who genuinely wants the best for you. And you tell them. Because it feels good to tell them. Because sharing it makes it feel more real. Because some part of you wants to be seen working towards something meaningful, and saying it out loud is the closest thing to proof that it exists. And then something quietly terrible happens. They ask questions you don't have answers to yet. They raise concerns you hadn't considered. They mean well, but suddenly the plan that felt solid in your mind feels fragile in the open air. The excitement drains. The momentum stalls. And 6 months later, for reasons you can't fully explain, it never happened. This is not a coincidence. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer's research on symbolic self-completion found that when people announce their intentions to others, the social acknowledgement they receive creates a premature sense of progress, as if telling the plan were the same as executing it. The brain registers the conversation as partial completion. The drive to actually do the thing quietly weakens. Sun Tzu said it with the precision of someone who understood that survival depended on it. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. Not mysterious for the sake of mystique. Strategic, because exposure invites interference, intentional or not. In any room you enter, the most powerful person is never the most knowable person. They reveal conclusions, not process. They show results, not intentions. By the time the room understands what they've been building, it is already built. The eager person broadcasts their intentions and hands everyone around them the tools to slow them down. The powerful person lets the room discover what they've already done. Concealing your plans is essential. But what about your emotions? Because in every room you'll ever enter, the person who controls their emotional reactions controls everyone else's too. That's Rule 6. Rule 6: be the calmest person in the room. Picture a room where everything is going wrong. A meeting that has slipped off the rails. An argument that has crossed the line from professional into personal. A high-stakes moment where the pressure is visible on every face, where people are reacting faster than they're thinking, where the energy in the room has become something feral and ungoverned. Now picture one person who is completely, unnervingly calm. Not cold, not absent, not the kind of checked-out stillness that reads as indifference. Fully engaged, eyes sharp, posture open, present in every sense but unshaken. Like the chaos around them is weather, and they are simply waiting for it to pass. Watch what happens in that room. Without anyone deciding to, without a word being spoken about it, people begin to orient toward that person. They become the fixed point, the psychological anchor. Because when everything around us is unstable, we are wired to find the thing that isn't and defer to it. Marcus Aurelius, a man who governed an empire at war while managing plagues, betrayals, and the full weight of Roman collapse, wrote this in his private journals: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't writing for an audience, he was writing to remind himself, which means he needed the reminder too, and chose calm anyway. Seneca cuts even deeper. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most emotional reactions in a room are not responses to what is actually happening, they are responses to what people fear might happen. The calm person has already made peace with the worst case, and that peace is visible, and it is magnetic. The Whitcower research confirms it at a neurological level. Composure is not just a virtue, it is a status signal. Prestige rank reads as stillness under pressure, not aggression. This rule gets easier with age, and it is one reason why the most quietly powerful person in any room is often not the youngest one in it. The reactive person lets the room's energy control them. The calm person makes the room's energy answer to them. Of all 6 rules so far, which one are you going to start using this week? One word in the comments. Go. 6 rules in. You control the space, the silence, the story, the relationships, the information, and the emotion. Now rule 7. This is the one that ties everything together. And it's also the darkest one on this list. Rule 7, make yourself necessary, not likable. Consider 2 people working in the same organization. The first is universally liked, warm, funny, the kind of person who remembers birthdays and lightens every room they walk into. People genuinely enjoy their company. Invitations find them. Conversations gravitate toward them. The second person is not particularly charming. They don't work the room. They don't perform warmth. But somehow, every important project runs through them. They know things other people need to know. They connect people who need to be connected. When a problem appears that no one else can solve, someone always says the same name. Now ask yourself honestly, which one is more powerful? Which one is harder to remove? Which one does the organization quietly reorganize itself around? It is not the likable one. Machiavelli wrote that the first method of estimating the intelligence of a leader is to look at the people they choose to keep close. The corollary, the part he left for the reader to find, is that the wisest move available to anyone is to become the person others feel they cannot afford to lose. Not the person they enjoy, the person they need. Likability is a feeling. Feelings change. A newer, warmer, more entertaining person walks through the door and the feeling transfers without ceremony. But necessity compounds. It deepens over time. It creates gravity that operates even in your absence. The practical application is this. Identify what knowledge, skill, or relationship you hold that no one else in your world can easily replicate, and then deepen it deliberately. Become the node. Become the person through whom things flow, problems get solved, and connections get made. And here is the integrity line. Because it matters, this rule is not about hoarding information or engineering artificial dependencies. It is about developing genuine expertise and real relationships so thoroughly that your presence is felt even when you are not in the room. The likable person is popular until someone more likable arrives. The necessary person is irreplaceable, and their influence operates long after they have left. 7 rules. Let's make sure they're locked in, because knowing them once isn't enough. Knowing them once is just the beginning. The 7 laws spoken plain, 7 rules. Let's say them plainly. Rule 1. Control the space before you speak. Walk in with intention. Sit where power sits. Let the room adjust to you, not the other way around. Rule 2. Use silence as a weapon. The person who speaks first in an uncomfortable silence is almost always the one with less power. Let the silence work for you. Rule 3. Write your own narrative before someone else does. Your story is being told whether you participate or not. Be the author. Rule 4. Make people feel seen, not as performance, as practice. The person who makes others feel genuinely understood holds a kind of influence that no title can replicate. Rule 5. Never reveal your full hand. Protect your plans. Announce your results. Let the room discover what you've already built. Rule 6. Be the calmest person in the room. Composure is not weakness. It is the highest status signal available to you in any high-pressure moment. Rule 7. Make yourself necessary, not merely likable. Likable is forgettable. Necessary is irreplaceable. On their own, each of these is useful. Together, they are a complete system, and the people who operate by all 7 don't just enter rooms differently. They leave rooms differently too. But I want to leave you with something that no other video in this space will tell you. Because knowing these rules is only half of it. The rarest power of all here is what Machiavelli understood, and what his critics have always missed. He wasn't teaching people to become monsters. He was teaching people who had been treated as pawns how to understand the board. These 7 rules are not for people who want to dominate others for sport. They are for people who are tired of being dominated. For the person who worked harder than everyone else and still got passed over. For the person who trusted someone who used that trust as a weapon. For the person who has been overlooked, dismissed, or quietly pushed aside, not because they lacked the talent, but because they lacked the map. You have the mapped now. Whether you are 23 and learning this for the first time, or 65 and wishing someone had handed this to you 40 years ago, it is not too late. Power has no age requirement. The room does not check your birth year before it decides whether to take you seriously. You decide that. The goal was never to become the most feared person in the room. The goal is to become the person the room cannot afford to ignore while still being someone you recognize in the mirror. Seneca wrote it with the quiet authority of someone who had survived emperors and exile alike. Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. Not power over others, power over yourself. The ability to choose deliberately, consciously, every single time how you show up. In every room, regardless of who is watching, regardless of whether anyone ever notices or names what you are doing. That is the rarest power of all, and it has always been available to you. If that's who you want to become, I need you to do one thing before you leave. Move one thing before you leave. Drop one word in the comments, the rule you are starting this week. That's it. One word. You already know which one it is. If this video gave you something, a shift, a recognition, a moment where something finally clicked, share it with one person in your life who needs this map. That is not generosity. That is strategy. You are giving someone you care about the advantage most people spend a lifetime never finding. And if these 7 rules changed how you see every room you walk into, wait until you see what happens when you apply them to the one person in your life who has been quietly running the most powerful manipulation campaign against you. That video is coming. Make sure you are subscribed when it does. The room doesn't know your name. It knows your energy.